Welcome back to a quieter hour. The day has finished asking things of you. Now the night, with all its patience, is here. Lower the lights in your mind a little. Tonight we are going to drift very slowly into the warm, shallow waters where great coral reefs have been quietly building themselves for thousands and thousands of years. This is the Circadian Institute. We make slow, scientifically grounded stories meant for sleep. The voice is steady, the pace is patient. Tonight's destination is the world of coral reefs, vast living gardens at the edge of the sea, built by countless small ancient lives, carrying entire cities of fish and small quiet creatures inside their warm, calm rooms of stone and light. Subscribing is the small gesture that keeps these journeys reaching new sleepers each night. Before we begin, let your body settle. Feel the support beneath you. Feel the surface where your weight already rests. There is nothing you need to do tonight, nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to fix. The night is already moving without you, slowly, quietly, exactly as it should. Let your breath be ordinary, not deeper, not slower, just whatever it already is. Notice the way the air enters on its own. Notice the way it leaves on its own. The breath has been doing this all day. It does not need your supervision tonight. Sleep arrives the way evening arrives, gradually, without effort, without permission, without anyone announcing it. There is nothing to hurry, there is nothing to wait for. The body knows the way. The room around you is quieter than it was an hour ago. The world is quieter than it was at noon. Somewhere outside, the small sounds of the night are still moving slowly. None of them need your attention. They are part of the soft, ordinary noise of the world preparing to rest. Let your shoulders drop a little if they have not already. Let your jaw soften. Let your tongue rest where it wants to rest. There is no posture you need to hold. Your body knows how to lie down. It has been doing this every night of your life. Tonight, instead of a place far inland, we are going to drift slowly toward the warm edges of the sea, toward the shallow waters where the world is full of soft color, where light moves in slow patterns through gentle currents, where countless small lives are quietly continuing their patient work, the work of building one of the greatest natural cities on Earth. We are going to drift into the world of coral reefs, the warm, patient gardens of the tropical seas, the slow architecture of stone and light, the quiet cities where countless small creatures live their unhurried lives, watched over by the gentle, slow motion of the water. The journey we are about to take is slow on purpose. Nothing will happen quickly. There are no surprises ahead. There is no part of this story that requires you to stay awake. If you fall asleep before we are finished, that is the right ending. We will simply continue the journey without you. So let the room hold you. Let the bed hold you. Let the pillow hold your head, and let the warm, patient world of coral reefs begin to open, very slowly, the way the sea opens at dawn when no one is watching. A coral reef is, at first glance, a kind of garden, but it is also a kind of city, and it is also a kind of mountain, and it is also a kind of slow, patient sculpture made by the smallest possible hands. There may be no other thing in the natural world that is so many different things at once. The stones of a coral reef were not made by stoneworkers. They were not made by waves. They were not made by volcanoes. They were made very slowly by tiny living creatures called coral polyps, most of them no larger than the head of a pin. A coral polyp is a small, soft animal related distantly to jellyfish and sea anemones. It looks, when fully extended, like a tiny flower with a ring of slow-moving tentacles around a central mouth. Each polyp is alone. Each polyp is also part of a colony. Each colony is also part of a reef. Each reef is also part of an ocean. Each polyp builds around its soft body a small cup of stone. The stone is calcium carbonate, the same material as chalk, as eggshells, as seashells. The polyp pulls the calcium from the seawater and lays it down, slowly, as a hard protective home. When a polyp dies, its small stone cup remains. Another polyp grows on top of it. Another stone cup is built. Another polyp lives. Another polyp dies. Another stone cup remains. Generation after generation, century after century, the stones rise up out of the sea floor. This is how a coral reef is built. Not by a great architect, not by a single mind, but by countless small lives, each laying down a tiny stone, each contributing a fraction of a millimeter to the great slow-growing whole. A coral reef the size of a building may contain billions of these small stone cups, layered upon each other across many thousands of years. The Great Barrier Reef, the largest reef on Earth, has been growing slowly, for somewhere between 6,000 and 20,000 years. The reef beneath it, in older form, is older still. This is one of the things that makes a coral reef so quietly extraordinary. It is one of the few large structures on Earth that is built primarily by living things. Not by erosion, not by tectonics, not by lava cooling, by the patient stoneworking of small, soft animals that you would barely notice if you swam past one. Coral polyps build slowly. A typical reef-building coral colony grows perhaps a few millimeters in a year, a few centimeters at most. Some species are slower. The most ancient corals on the largest reefs may have been laying down their stones since long before the first ships sailed across the ocean. This slowness is one of the reasons coral reefs are so important. They are biological history. Every layer of stone is a year, or several years of small lives. Every reef contains a vertical archive of the climate and chemistry of the sea over centuries. Scientists can read these layers the way a tree's rings can be read. The bands of stone are slightly thicker in years when the water was warm and food was plentiful, slightly thinner in years when the sea was cooler or stormier. A reef is, in some sense, a slow and patient diary of the ocean it grew up in. The largest coral reef structures on Earth are vast. The Great Barrier Reef stretches for nearly 2,300 kilometers along the eastern coast of Australia. It is so large that it can be seen from space. It is among the largest single living structures the planet has ever produced. And yet, every meter of that great reef was built slowly by the small hands of polyps. There is no part of it that was made by anything larger than a fingernail. This is one of the gentle marvels of the natural world, a pattern that repeats across many forms of life. The tallest forests are built from cells the size of a pinprick. The deepest soils are built by tiny fungi and worms. The largest mountains rise from grains of sand. The largest reefs rise from the patient work of polyps. Tonight we will visit this slow architecture slowly. We will look at how a polyp builds its stone, how a colony coordinates, how a reef shelters whole communities of fish and other quiet creatures, how the rhythm of light and tide moves through these warm, patient gardens, how they have changed across geological time. None of it requires your attention. The reef is already there. The reef will be there tomorrow. The polyps are still extending their small, soft tentacles into the warm tropical water exactly as they have done for thousands of generations. They do not need an audience. They never have. But it is good company sometimes to know what is happening beneath the surface of the sea while you rest. The way it is good company to know that the moon is still up even when you cannot see it. The way it is good company to know that the tide is rising somewhere, even when you are far from any shore. So we will look tonight at the warm, patient world of coral reefs, the architecture of stone and light, the cities of small lives, the slow ancient music of polyps and water, and we will look slowly because the reef itself moves slowly and the night moves slowly, and that is exactly the right pace. Inside the warm, shallow seas of the world, there are reefs being built right now exactly as we speak. Tiny polyps somewhere are pulling calcium out of the water. Tiny stone cups are slowly thickening. Tiny tentacles are moving in slow rhythms. The work that has been going on for thousands of years is still going on tonight. Let us drift toward them. Slowly, slowly, there is plenty of night. To understand how a coral reef builds itself, it helps to begin very small, with a single polyp alone in the warm, shallow water. There may be no better starting place for any large story than the smallest version of it. A polyp begins as a tiny floating speck called a planula. The planula drifts in the water, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, carried by the slow currents of the warm sea. It does not have a destination. It does not have a plan. It only has a small body, a faint sensitivity to light, and a quiet, patient instinct to settle, eventually on a hard surface. When the planula finds the right surface, usually a hard piece of stone, or another reef, or sometimes the sun-warmed top of an old shipwreck, it settles down, attaches itself, and begins very slowly to grow into a polyp. The drifting is finished. The settled life has begun. Once the polyp has attached, it begins to build. It draws calcium from the seawater. It combines that calcium with carbonate, which is also present in the water. The result is calcium carbonate, the same hard mineral that makes seashells and chalk and the limestone of ancient seafloor mountains. The polyp lays this calcium carbonate down underneath itself like a small cup of stone. The cup grows slowly around the polyp's soft, cylindrical body. The polyp itself never gets larger than a grain of rice, but its house over time becomes part of something far larger. Most reef-building corals do not stay alone. They reproduce by splitting themselves into copies. Each copy is genetically identical to the first polyp. Each copy attaches alongside the original. Each copy builds its own small stone cup. Each copy splits again. The colony grows. Over months and years, the colony forms a coordinated structure. Some species grow as branching antlers with delicate arms reaching upward toward the sunlight. Some grow as great rounded boulders slowly thickening in all directions. Some grow as flat plates, like soft stone tables resting on the seafloor. The shape depends on the species, on the depth, on the currents, on the light. All of these forms have something in common. They are all made of countless tiny polyps, sitting side by side in their tiny stone cups. each one barely visible, each one quietly continuing its small individual life inside the great shared body of the colony. To understand how slow this growth really is, consider that a single coral colony can take 100 years to grow as large as a person. A large reef-building colony, the kind that anchors entire reef communities, may have been growing since before any human was alive to watch it. There are coral colonies on Earth older than every cathedral. Reefs grow upward, mostly. They grow toward the light. The polyps, like many shallow sea organisms, are dependent on sunlight in a way we will explore later. So they reach for it, slowly, layer by layer, century by century. The reef accumulates upward like a city growing tower by tower. Reefs also grow outward, where the water is favorable. They spread along seafloors, across submerged platforms, around tropical islands. The largest reefs follow the contours of underwater geography in long, graceful curves, sometimes hundreds or thousands of kilometers long. Where conditions are right, reef structures form predictable shapes. Fringing reefs grow close to a shore, sometimes nearly attached to it. Barrier reefs grow at a distance from a shore, separated by a quiet lagoon. Atolls grow in rings, often around the worn-down remains of an ancient volcano whose island sank thousands or millions of years ago. Each shape is a story about the sea floor underneath it. Atolls are perhaps the strangest of these. They are nearly circular reefs that surround a calm, shallow lagoon. The lagoon is what is left of a sunken island. The reef grew up around the rim of the island while the island slowly sank into the seafloor. Long after the island is gone, the reef remains, a circle of stone in open ocean, marking the absence of land beneath it. Some atolls in the Pacific are kilometers across. Most atolls of the world are remnants of ancient volcanoes that no living creature has ever seen. The reef remembers. The reef carries the shape of the lost mountain forward in stone, into a future that the mountain itself never reached. Reefs are picky about where they grow. They generally need warm water between about 20 and 29 degrees Celsius. They need clear water so that sunlight can reach the polyps. They need stable salinity. They need a hard surface to anchor to. They need water that is neither too still nor too turbulent. The combination is delicate. This is why reefs are concentrated in particular regions of the world: the tropical seas, the warm shallow shelves, the coastlines that face open ocean but receive gentle currents. There are not reefs everywhere there is sea. There are reefs only where the sea has been kind in the right ways for long enough. Where the reef finds its right place, it stays. Reefs persist in roughly the same locations for millions of years. The reef visible at the surface today may be only the topmost layer of stone that began forming during the last ice age. Beneath it, in the deep limestone, lie even older reefs, the same patient work repeated by countless successive generations of polyps. Tonight, while you rest, this slow building is continuing in countless reefs around the world. Polyps are extending their tentacles into the warm, dark water. Stone cups are thickening by fractions of millimeters. The reef is growing the way it has grown every night, every year, every century, since long before any of us existed. It is one of the steadiest, slowest, most reliable processes in the natural world. It does not rush, it does not stop, it does not need our attention. It will continue while you sleep tonight. It will continue while you wake. It will continue in some form for as long as the warm, shallow seas remain. Let us continue our drift very slowly deeper into this patient, warm world. There is a secret hidden inside every reef-building coral that is one of the most beautiful collaborations in the natural world. It is so tightly woven into the daily life of a polyp that without it, no large coral reef could exist, and yet you cannot see it without a microscope. Inside the soft tissue of nearly every reef-building coral polyp lives a tiny single-celled organism called a zooxanthella. The name is long, but the creature is small, much smaller than the polyp it lives inside. There may be hundreds of thousands of zooxanthellae inside a single polyp cells, like dust motes living inside a small flower. Zooxanthellae are a kind of algae. They photosynthesize the way plants do. They take in sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, and they produce sugars and oxygen. They do this all day, every day, while the polyp shelters them. In exchange for the shelter, the zooxanthellae give the polyp most of the energy it needs. As much as 90% of a polyp's daily food in many species comes from the sugars its zooxanthellae produce. The polyp does not have to hunt for most of its meals. It simply hosts a quiet population of microscopic gardeners who turn sunlight directly into the food the polyp needs to grow. This is what makes reef-building corals fundamentally different from their distant relatives, the open ocean jellyfish and sea anemones. A jellyfish has to drift through the water and capture small prey. A reef-building coral has in some sense decided to grow its own food by collaborating with algae instead of competing with them. The result is an animal that builds stone with the help of trapped sunlight. This collaboration is also what gives most healthy reef corals their beautiful colors, the pigments inside the zooxanthellae, and a few accessory pigments produced by the polyp combine to create the warm browns, greens, golds, pinks, and soft blues that make coral reefs visually unforgettable. This is one of the reasons coral reefs only thrive in shallow, sunlit water. The zooxanthellae need light to photosynthesize. As you go deeper, the light fades. Corals can grow at deeper depths, but with fewer zooxanthellae, slower growth, and different colors. The bright, colorful reefs we picture in our imaginations grow at depths where the sun still reaches with strength. The collaboration between coral and algae is one of evolution's quiet masterpieces. It is also delicate. When something stresses the coral, water that is too warm, too acidic, too polluted, the polyp ejects its zooxanthellae. Without the algae, the coral loses its color. The white of its bare stone cup shows through the now translucent polyp tissue. This is what scientists call coral bleaching. A bleached coral is not necessarily dead. If the stress passes within a few weeks, the coral can take new zooxanthellae back into its tissue and recover. But if the stress continues, the coral, without its main food source, starves. Coral bleaching, when it persists, is a slow form of dying. This is one of the reasons coral reefs are sensitive to changes in the ocean. They live biologically on a fine line, at temperatures warm enough to grow well, but not so warm that they reject their algae. They are creatures of carefully balanced conditions. That delicate balance is also one of the things that has made coral reefs persist for hundreds of millions of years. Over geological time, sea temperatures have risen and fallen. Reefs in some periods have shrunk dramatically, then recovered, then shrunk, then recovered again. The pattern of reef life through the long ages of Earth is one of patient resilience. In the warm, shallow seas of today, This collaboration is happening right now in countless coral colonies around the world. Microscopic algae packed into the cells of microscopic polyps are turning sunlight into sugar, while the polyps slowly build stone around themselves. The light becomes the reef becomes the city becomes the long, quiet song of the seafloor. If you have ever heard the phrase, the rainforest of the sea, this is part of what it means. Like a rainforest, a coral reef converts sunlight into a vast architecture of living matter in a precise relationship with hosts of partner species. Like a rainforest, it is a system of cooperation as much as competition. Like a rainforest, it is one of the most diverse biological places on Earth. And like a rainforest, a coral reef holds in its gentle, slow life a kind of accumulated wisdom, millions of years of evolution writing itself patiently into stone. Tonight, somewhere in the warm tropical seas, a small polyp is taking in sunlight through its zooxanthellae, building its small stone cup and continuing the slow work of making the reef. It does not need to know that you are here. It does not need to know that anyone is here. The collaboration between the polyp and the algae has been going on for hundreds of millions of years. It will go on in some form for as long as warm, clear, shallow seas remain on Earth. It is good to know it is happening. The way it is good to know that the seasons are turning somewhere, even when you are sleeping. The way it is good to know that the moon is rising, somewhere even when you cannot see it. The reef does its work. The polyps host their algae. The algae catch the sunlight. The stone slowly thickens. The reef slowly grows. And tonight, you are here in your bed, while all of this is happening far away in a warm, shallow sea you may never visit. That is also a kind of beauty. The world is full of quiet processes that do not need us. We only need to know they are continuing. So let us drift very slowly, deeper into the gentle world the polyps have built. There is a great deal more to see. If you could swim slowly along a healthy coral reef, even just at the surface looking down, you would see very quickly why these places are called gardens. The variety of shapes, colors, and slow movements is unlike anything else in the natural world. It is a kind of botanical chaos turned to peace. Some corals look like the antlers of pale stags, branching upward into the water. Others look like the unrolled pages of giant stone books, stacked and curled. Others look like soft round boulders covered in tiny pinpricks of color. Others look like fans or feathers or great convoluted brains turned to stone. There is no single coral. There are over 6,000 known species, with new ones still being discovered. Each species has its own characteristic way of building, its own preferred depth, its own preferred current, its own specific beauty. The branching corals, sometimes called staghorn corals, grow rapidly in good conditions and form delicate forests. They are favorite hiding places for small fish. Their thin arms reach into the water, exposing as much surface as possible to the sunlight. The boulder corals grow more slowly, in dense, rounded mounds. A single boulder coral can be hundreds of years old. Their shape resists the strong currents. Their slow, steady growth makes them the long-term anchors of many reefs. The plate corals grow as flat, overlapping leaves, like tilted stone tables. They grow especially well at slightly deeper depths, where they can spread horizontally to catch as much filtered sunlight as possible. From above, A colony of plate corals looks like a slow stone forest of thin curved discs. The brain corals, with their deep mazes of curved channels, look like nothing else in nature. Each channel houses a row of polyps, sharing tissues, sharing food, sharing the slow rhythm of growth. A large brain coral, glowing softly in the warm sunlight, is one of the gentlest images the sea has to offer. Among the corals, there are also the soft corals, corals that do not build hard stone cups, but instead grow as flexible bodies that wave gently in the currents. They look almost like underwater flowers, sea fans, sea whips, sea pens, each one rooted to the reef, each one moving with the slow tide. Soft corals add another layer of color and movement to the reef. Their tissues hold many of the same kinds of zooxanthellae as the stony corals, but their bodies do not become a permanent part of the reef. When they die, they decompose into the water and the sand, leaving the stone to the polyps that build it. Among the corals, there are also the anemones, distant cousins of the polyps, which do not build cups, but live as single soft animals larger than polyps, with longer slow tentacles. They sit on the reef. They wait. They host their own small worlds. Anemones are most famous perhaps for their relationship with clownfish, the small bright orange and white fish that live among the anemone's stinging tentacles, immune to the sting because of a layer of mucus on their skin. The clownfish gets shelter, the anemone gets the cleaning, oxygenating presence of the fish swimming through it. Each protects the other in their quiet way. This is just one of the many small partnerships of the reef. There are countless others, cleaner fish that visit larger fish to remove parasites, shrimp that share burrows with gobies, crabs that wear sponges on their backs, octopi that mimic the colors of corals, each pairing a small treaty between two species refined over millions of years of life among the stones. Color, too, varies through the reef in slow patterns. The warmer pink, orange, yellow tones of certain coral species, the deep teal blue of others, the soft purple of giant clams nestled into the limestone, the translucent pale of glass shrimp, the flashing iridescence of small wrasses, the gentle gold of certain butterfly fish. The reef is a soft palette in slow motion. Most of these colors come from pigments, molecules inside the cells of the coral, the algae, the fish. Some colors are structural, produced by the shape of microscopic surfaces that scatter light in particular ways. Some are fluorescent. The coral takes in invisible ultraviolet light and emits it back as a soft glow. Coral fluorescence is one of the more recent discoveries. Some species of coral, when illuminated with blue light, glow in vivid colors: pink, green, gold, purple. The reasons for this fluorescence are still being studied. It may protect the coral from too intense sunlight. It may help its zooxanthellae survive. It may serve no purpose at all and simply exist as one of evolution's quiet curiosities. Either way, the reef holds light in many ways. It absorbs light to feed itself. It reflects light to display its colors. It scatters light to confuse predators. It emits light to glow softly in the depths. Every part of the reef has its own quiet relationship with the sun. And throughout this great variety, slow movement continues. The currents carry small drifting plankton across the reef. The fish move in their slow patterns from coral to coral. The polyps extend and retract their tentacles. The soft corals sway. The reef breathes, the reef glows. The reef simply continues in its calm, chromatic way. doing what reefs have done for hundreds of millions of years. Tonight, somewhere in the warm tropical seas, this same slow orchestra is unfolding. Different reef, different polyps, different fish, same patient, peaceful work. The colors hold themselves quietly in the dark. They will be there in the morning when the sun rises again over the warm, shallow water. The polyps will extend. The algae will begin photosynthesizing. The fish will resume their slow patterns. Another day on the reef will continue exactly as the day before. Let us continue our drift slowly through the warm, peaceful gardens of the reef. There is more to see, and we are in no hurry. A coral reef is not only a structure of stone, it is also a city. Inside its walls, in its caverns and hollows, in the spaces between its corals, in the shadows of its overhangs, an entire civilization of small lives moves slowly through every hour of every day. Some scientists estimate that as many as 1 in every 4 marine species spends some part of its life on a reef. The fish of the reef are perhaps its most visible residents. Schools of small, bright wrasses moving like clouds, larger groupers patiently waiting in the shadows of overhangs, parrotfish slowly gnawing at the algae growing on dead coral, leaving behind streaks of fine, pale sand, triggerfish standing guard over their nests, butterfly fish drifting in pairs through the shallowest garden. Each species of reef fish has its own quiet niche. Some eat the small invertebrates that live in cracks, some eat algae, some eat coral itself, scraping at the polyp-covered stone, some eat plankton drifting in the open water, some eat other fish. The reef sustains them all with its endless, slow flow of nutrients and shelter. Parrotfish, in particular, do something quietly remarkable. They eat algae and dead coral. They have strong fused teeth like beaks, capable of biting and grinding the calcium carbonate stone. They digest the organic material and excrete the rest as fine sand. The sand of many tropical beaches has been processed at some point through the digestive tract of a parrotfish. Walking on a tropical beach is, in part, walking on the slow, patient output of these slow, patient fish. This is one of the secret partnerships of the reef. The corals provide the structure. The parrotfish, by eating dead coral, prevent algae from overwhelming healthy corals. The byproduct, sand, gradually accumulates around the reef and on nearby beaches. The sand stabilizes the shoreline. The shoreline protects the reef from large waves. Each part takes care of the next. Beyond the fish, the reef holds countless invertebrates: crabs, shrimp, lobsters, sea urchins, sea stars, sea cucumbers, snails, octopuses, nudibranchs. Many of them are small, many of them are nocturnal, many of them spend much of their lives hiding in cracks, emerging only briefly to eat or move or mate. The octopuses of the reef are particularly thoughtful animals. They have the largest brains of any invertebrate. They solve puzzles, they open jars, they use coconut shells as portable shelters. They change their color and texture to match their surroundings, becoming almost instantly indistinguishable from a coral or a sponge. They see in their own strange way, with photoreceptors in their skin as well as their eyes. On the reef, an octopus is one of the cleverest hunters. It moves slowly along the rocks, exploring, problem-solving, sometimes catching small crabs and clams. It is also one of the cleverest hiders. When threatened, it can disappear in seconds into a crevice you would never have noticed. It is, in some sense, the secret intelligence of the reef. The sea stars and sea urchins are slower and quieter. They graze on algae, on small invertebrates, on dead matter. Sea stars walk on hundreds of tiny tube feet, each one a small hydraulic foot that can be extended or retracted at will. Sea urchins are walking pincushions, slowly and deliberately processing the surface of the reef as they go. Together, the grazers, fish, urchins, snails, crabs, keep the reef from being overgrown by algae. Without them, fast-growing algae would smother slow-growing coral. With them, the balance holds. The reef remains a reef. The largest residents of the reef are also the rarest visitors. Reef sharks, manta rays, sea turtles, occasional whales passing through. Each of them moves slowly with quiet grace through the larger spaces of the reef. They are not the architects. They are the larger guests who use the reef without altering it much, who pass through and continue on their way. Sea turtles, in particular, return to certain reefs throughout their long lives, to feed in the seagrass meadows around the reef edges, to rest in the shadows of overhangs. They have been seen napping under coral ledges, their slow flippers tucked, their shells pale gold in the filtered light. The reef gives them shelter. They give the reef nothing in particular except their slow, gentle presence. Reef sharks are usually small and shy. They tend to avoid swimmers. They glide along the reef edges at dawn and dusk, hunting small fish and squid. Their movement is unhurried. Their presence is part of the natural order. They are not the threat that they are sometimes imagined to be. They are simply quiet companions of the reef, doing their work in the slow rhythm of the warm sea. The reef sustains all of these lives, large and small. It does so by its sheer structural complexity. The cracks shelter the small, the overhangs shelter the medium, the open spaces around the reef shelter the large. Every dimension of the reef offers some kind of home to some kind of creature. The diversity of the reef is part of why coral reefs are sometimes called the rainforests of the sea. They occupy a tiny fraction, about 1/4% of the ocean's surface. They host a quarter of all known marine species. Pound for pound, square meter for square meter, no other marine ecosystem is so densely populated. Tonight, somewhere in the warm tropical seas, all of these lives are continuing. The fish are settling into their crevices to sleep. The octopuses are emerging to hunt. The parrotfish are tucked into mucus bubbles they exude every evening, hiding their scent from nocturnal predators. The sea turtles are resting under their preferred overhangs. The slow city of the reef is doing what cities do at night, quieting in some places, waking in others. And the polyps continue building, tentacles extended, stone slowly thickening, the reef adding fractions of a millimeter to its great old patient architecture, while its inhabitants live their unhurried lives upon and within it. There is something deeply restful about contemplating this. A whole community at work and at rest at once, a whole geography of cooperation, a whole quiet civilization, none of whose members has any idea what tomorrow holds, but all of whom are doing exactly what their nature asks of them tonight. Let us continue very slowly through their warm, patient world. There is more night ahead and more reef. Coral reefs are not new on Earth. Some form of reef has existed in tropical seas for nearly 500 million years. The earliest reefs were not built by today's coral species, but by ancient relatives and by sponges and by other organisms whose names we no longer use except in textbooks. The reef as a kind of ecosystem is one of the oldest ideas the sea has ever had. If you traveled back to the seas of 350 million years ago, you would find reefs that looked very different. The corals would be unfamiliar species. The fish would be primitive. The seas would be warmer in some places, cooler in others. But the structure, a ridge of stone built by colonies of small organisms, would be recognizable. The pattern persists. The history of reefs is a history of patient persistence. There have been 5 major mass extinction events on Earth, and reefs have suffered in each one. Some have nearly vanished. Each time, given enough time and stable conditions, they have returned. New species replace old ones. New polyps colonize old stones. New cities rise on the slowly buried foundations of older cities. The corals we see today are descended from species that survived the most recent of these extinction events about 66 million years ago, the same event that ended the era of large dinosaurs. The reefs of the modern world are, in some sense, post-dinosaur reefs. They have had nearly 70 million years to refine themselves into the gardens we know. In that long time, sea levels have risen and fallen many times. During ice ages, when much of the ocean's water was locked up in glaciers, the warm, shallow seas where reefs grow were less extensive. Reefs retreated to lower latitudes and to deeper, warmer pockets. When the ice melted, the seas rose again. The reefs slowly rebuilt themselves at higher elevations. This is one of the reasons coral reefs sometimes appear in unexpected places. Far inland, in arid deserts that were once covered by tropical seas, ancient reef structures still rise from the bedrock. The Dolomites of northern Italy contain entire fossil reefs. Dolomite stone formed by polyps and other reef builders that lived in shallow tropical seas during the Triassic period more than 200 million years ago. To stand at the foot of these mountains is to look up at what was once, in some sense, a coral garden held by warm seas, populated by polyps and shellfish and ancient swimming creatures. The water is gone. The reef remains. It has become rock. It has become mountain. It has become the foundation of a continent. Geological time is, in this sense, partly written by polyps. Whole layers of the Earth's crust were laid down by reef-building organisms over hundreds of millions of years. Limestone, the stone that builds cathedrals, that lines great valleys, that stands as cliffs against the sea, is in many places ancient reef material transformed by pressure and time into something that no longer looks like a coral but is, fundamentally, the same calcium carbonate work that polyps still do tonight. This is one of the gentle marvels of biology. Life shapes geography. Living things over long enough time become mountains. Tiny soft creatures become hard cliffs. The work of small bodies repeated over millions of generations accumulates into the most permanent features of the planet. Reefs themselves have changed in character across these long ages. The reefs of the Cretaceous, when dinosaurs walked the land, were dominated by strange shellfish-like creatures called rudists, which built reef structures in their own way before going extinct. The reefs that came before the dinosaurs were dominated by different stony corals than today. Each era has its own reef-building characters. And yet the basic idea, small creatures building stone in shallow tropical seas, has remained roughly the same. The roles change, the actors change, the story persists. The reef as a kind of place is older than nearly anything else in biology. Some species of coral that exist today have hardly changed in 50 million years. Their genes are remarkably stable. The patterns they grow in are remarkably stable. They are, in some quiet way, living fossils. Slow refinements have happened. but the basic shape of their lives, the planula stage, the settlement, the colony, the stone cup, the symbiosis with algae, has remained the same since long before any human existed. This is one of the things that makes contemplating a reef so quietly humbling. You're looking at an arrangement of life that is older than nearly any human institution, older than every language, older than every religion, older than the modern continents in their current shape. The reef as a way of being alive has outlasted most other ways. It will likely outlast many that have not yet appeared. There is comfort in this. The reef does not depend on any single century. The reef does not depend on any single civilization. The reef has seen continents shift, oceans rise and fall, climates change, mass extinctions arrive and pass. Through all of this, in some form, the reef has continued. Tonight's reef is a thin, recent layer on a much older reef. Beneath the polyps you might swim past today, in a clear tropical sea, lie the ancestors of those polyps, and the ancestors of the ancestors, going back through the limestone for thousands of years, then for millions, then for tens of millions. A reef is a vertical archive of patient life. This is one of the gentlest perspectives the reef offers. The slow patience of biological time, the accumulating weight of countless small lives, the sense that the work of one polyp on one night is part of a process older than human civilization. And tonight, somewhere in a warm tropical sea, a polyp is laying down a tiny new layer of stone. It does not know that it is part of a 500 million year tradition. It does not know that its small contribution will become eventually part of the planet's geology. It only knows how to build. The knowing is built into its genes. This is one of the things life often does well. It does not require self-awareness in order to do important work. The polyp does not need to understand its role. The reef does not need to understand its history. Both simply continue patiently doing what they have always done. If you are still listening, you do not have to remember any of this. The reefs will continue without your understanding. They have always done so. They will, in some form, continue long after any of us. This is one of the small mercies of the natural world. It does not need our witness in order to be itself. Let us drift slowly into the next quiet room of the reef. A reef is a different place by day than by night. Two distinct ecosystems share the same architecture, taking turns. The day shift is mostly fish and visible life. The night shift is mostly invertebrates and quieter creatures. The transition between them is one of the gentlest cycles in the natural world. As the sun rises over the warm tropical sea, the reef awakens. The corals, which have closed their tentacles for safety overnight, begin to extend them again. The zooxanthellae inside the polyps begin photosynthesizing as the light returns. The reef's energy budget restarts. The day's work begins. The day shift fish emerge from their crevices. Schools of small wrasses regroup. Parrotfish begin their day-long grazing. Butterfly fish pair up and begin their slow patrols of the shallow gardens. Larger groupers move out of their shadow caves to hunt. The water above the reef fills with Some species are most active at midday, when the sun is highest and the water is warmest. Others prefer the gentler light of morning and afternoon. Each species has its own rhythm. The reef as a whole hums with overlapping schedules. As the afternoon turns to evening, the light begins to dim. The reef begins to change. Many of the day shift fish begin retreating to their crevices and hidden sleeping spots. Some build small mucus bubbles around themselves to mask their scent from nocturnal predators. Others wedge themselves into specific cracks they return to every night. Parrotfish, in particular, build remarkable mucus cocoons each evening. The cocoon takes about 30 minutes to produce. It surrounds the parrotfish completely while it sleeps, and it serves as a kind of olfactory disguise. Moray eels, the parrotfish's main nighttime predators, hunt by smell. Inside the cocoon, the parrotfish is invisible to a moray's nose. As night falls, a different set of inhabitants begins to emerge. Octopuses, who spend much of the day hidden, slip out of their dens and begin to hunt. Many species of crabs and shrimp leave their daytime crevices and walk out across the reef in slow patterns. Sea urchins, which were tucked into shadows by day, move into more open positions to feed on algae. The corals themselves often look different at night. Some species extend their tentacles only after dark, when they hunt the small zooplankton that drift up from the deep water during the night. The reef appears after sunset to bloom, countless polyps reaching out into the water, their tentacles delicate and pale like a slow-blooming garden. Plankton drift up from the depths during the night because predation is lower in the dark. Daytime fish that would eat them are mostly asleep. The plankton, fragile and small, take advantage of the relative safety of the dark hours to feed near the surface. The reef, ready for them, extends its many tiny mouths. This is the reef's nightly meal. While most of its day shift inhabitants sleep, the reef itself, in the form of countless small polyps, feeds on the living rain of zooplankton that drifts gently up from the deep water. The coral's tentacles capture the tiny creatures, the polyps' mouths take them in. The colony is nourished, slowly, all night long. This is part of the slow secret of how reefs sustain themselves. Sunlight by day through the algae, plankton by night through the polyps' tentacles. Two different food sources, two different ways of harvesting the sea, woven together into a single integrated life. In the depths of the night, the reef is at its quietest. The fish that need rest are resting. The polyps are quietly extending and capturing. The octopuses are hunting in slow, careful searches. The water around the reef is cooler. The currents are gentler. The whole place breathes slowly in its strange, peaceful, nocturnal way. Some nights, on certain reefs, particular events take place. Once or twice a year, in coordinated synchrony, many corals release their eggs and sperm into the water on the same night, often timed to the phase of the moon. The water fills with countless tiny pink and orange dots, drifting upward slowly, mingling, beginning the next generation of polyps. This synchronized spawning is one of the natural world's most quietly extraordinary events. How the corals know to release their eggs on the same night, when they have no eyes, no central nervous system, no obvious means of communication, is one of the open mysteries of marine biology. The current best explanation involves changes in water temperature, daylight length, lunar cycles, and chemical signals released by the first polyps to spawn, but the precise mechanism is still being studied. Whatever the mechanism, the spawning works. The eggs and sperm meet in the water, fertilize, and develop into the small drifting planulae that will eventually settle to the bottom and begin building new colonies. This is how the reef reproduces. Not by individuals giving birth, but by communities releasing the next generation all together into the moonlit water. This is one of the gentlest images the night ocean offers. A whole reef releasing its future into the slow tropical current. each tiny dot a possible new colony somewhere in some shallow place where conditions are right, each tiny dot a contribution to a tradition that has been going on for hundreds of millions of years. Tonight, somewhere on Earth, a reef may be spawning, or a reef may be quietly feeding, polyps extended, plankton drifting up, octopus moving carefully across the stones, or a reef may simply be sleeping in the way reefs sleep, never entirely still, never entirely quiet, but in the gentle low-activity rhythm that the warm tropical sea has always known. And in the morning, the cycle will begin again. The day shift will emerge. The polyps will retract their tentacles. The light will return. The reef will hum once more with the activity of its visible inhabitants, while the night shift slips back into its hiding places. This rhythm has been going on in some form for hundreds of millions of years. It will continue tonight while you sleep. It will continue tomorrow night and the night after in countless reefs around the warm world. Let us continue slowly. A coral reef does not exist in still water. The water around it is always moving. Sometimes the movement is so gentle it is hardly visible, only the slow swaying of soft corals or the slight tilt of small fish swimming against an invisible flow. Sometimes the movement is stronger, the rush of an incoming tide, the press of an offshore current. Sometimes the movement is wild, the surge of a passing storm. All of this movement matters to the reef. Currents bring plankton. Currents bring oxygen. Currents bring the tiny drifting planulae that may grow into new colonies. Currents carry away waste. Currents distribute heat. The reef is, in some sense, sustained by the slow, patient circulation of the warm sea. Different parts of a reef experience different currents. The seaward side, exposed to the open ocean, often has stronger currents and bigger waves. The corals there tend to be more compact, more wave-resistant. The lagoon side, sheltered behind the reef crest, has calmer currents. The corals there can grow more delicately with finer branching forms. This is why reefs often have visible zones. From the open sea inward, you might pass first through the reef slope, where the strong currents shape the corals into low rounded forms, then through the reef crest, where the waves break and only the toughest corals survive, then into the back reef, the calm lagoon, where soft corals and delicate branching corals can flourish in still warm water. Each zone supports different communities. The fish at the reef crest are often muscular, fast, and adapted to constant motion. The fish in the lagoon are often more slender, more delicate, more deliberate in their movements. The animals do not fight the currents. They have over millions of years become shaped by them. Tides, too, shape life on the reef. Twice a day in most parts of the world, the sea rises and falls with the slow rhythm of the moon. The reef alternately deepens and shallows. The water that washes over the highest parts of the reef may be a meter deep at high tide and only a few centimeters at low tide. Different creatures in different zones adjust to this rise and fall. At low tide, on the very shallowest parts of some reefs, the water can become quite shallow. The corals exposed to direct sunlight may experience temperatures higher than ideal. They have evolved tolerance for these brief stresses. They wait in their stone cups for the tide to return. At high tide, the water deepens. The corals can extend their tentacles more freely. Plankton wash in from outside the reef. Fish that have been waiting in deeper water move up onto the shallows to feed. The reef in some ways comes alive again with each rising tide. The lunar rhythm of the tides has been part of reef life for as long as there have been reefs and a moon. The coral's synchronized spawning is timed partly to lunar cycles. Some fish migrate up and down the reef with the tides, feeding only when the water reaches certain depths. The slow gravitational pull of the moon is one of the patient choreographers of the warm tropical sea. Beyond the daily tides, there are longer rhythms. The seasons of the warm tropical seas are subtler than those of cooler waters. There is no winter in the equatorial reefs, but there are wet seasons and dry seasons, monsoons and trade winds, periods of more cloud cover and periods of brighter sun. The reef adjusts to all of them. Even longer rhythms operate. The El Niño climate pattern, which warms and cools the Pacific Ocean across cycles of several years, has powerful effects on reefs. Warmer water during a strong El Niño can stress corals, sometimes triggering bleaching. Cooler water in subsequent years allows the reef to recover. Reefs experience these cycles as part of their long lives. Storms, too, are part of the reef's experience. Tropical storms and hurricanes pass over the warm seas a few times a year. The most powerful of these can break apart parts of a reef, scattering corals, snapping branches, rolling boulder colonies across the seafloor. The reef receives these as part of the long life it lives. After a storm, the reef begins to heal. Broken pieces of branching coral may root themselves where they land, becoming new small colonies. Bare patches of stone gradually attract drifting planulae and become covered with new polyps. Within years, sometimes decades, the storm damage becomes part of the reef's long memory. This is one of the patient mercies of the natural world. The reef does not flee from storms. The reef does not avoid stress. The reef simply absorbs them, integrates them, and continues. The reef has been doing this for millions of years. Storms are part of its life, the way weather is part of any landscape. In the calm days between storms, in the gentle daily rise and fall of the tides, the reef does its slow work. The polyps build, the fish school, the octopuses hunt at night, the currents bring sustenance. The water grows warm in the morning and cool by the depths of night. Everything has its rhythm. Tonight, the warm tropical seas are doing all of these things. Somewhere a tide is rising. Somewhere a tide is falling. Somewhere a coral is extending its tentacles. Somewhere a polyp is releasing eggs into a moonlit current. Somewhere an octopus is moving across stone in slow, patient curiosity. All of this is happening without our attention. None of it requires our presence. The slow weather of the reef is its own slow weather. The slow rhythms of the warm sea are their own rhythms. We are guests when we visit. The reef does not depend on our company. There is something deeply restful about this. We do not have to do anything for the reef tonight. The reef does not need anything from us. We can rest while it continues its work. We can sleep while it continues its slow weather. Let us continue slowly into the next room of the reef. There is more night. There is more reef. There is no hurry. Coral reefs are scattered in patient archipelagos and long ribbons around the warm tropical seas of the world. Each region has its own great reefs with their own characters and their own stories. To know the reefs is to know, in some sense, a geography of warm, shallow seas. The Great Barrier Reef off the northeast coast of Australia is the largest reef system on Earth. It stretches for nearly 2,300 kilometers along the continental shelf. It contains nearly 3,000 individual reefs, hundreds of small islands, and a vast lagoon between the outer reef and the mainland. From space, it appears as a long, bright underwater curve, parallel to the Australian coast. The Great Barrier Reef is home to roughly 1,500 species of fish, 400 species of coral, and countless other creatures. It is so large and so diverse that even after a century of careful study, scientists are still discovering species that have never been cataloged. It is one of the most biologically rich places on the surface of the Earth. Far across the Pacific, on the other side of the world, the reefs of the Coral Triangle, between Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and Timor-Leste, are smaller individually but collectively contain more species of coral than any other region on Earth. The Coral Triangle is sometimes called the Amazon of the seas for the sheer biological richness of its reefs. In the Indian Ocean, off the coast of Africa, the reefs of the Maldives spread across hundreds of small atolls. The Maldives is itself, in some sense, a coral nation. Almost the entire country is built on coral reefs and atolls, with no point of land more than a few meters above sea level. The reefs are not just nearby, they are the foundation. In the Caribbean, the Mesoamerican reef stretches along the coasts of Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras for nearly 1,000 kilometers. It is the largest reef in the Atlantic Ocean. Its waters are home to sea turtles, manta rays, whale sharks, and countless smaller species. The reef has shaped the cultures and economies of the coastal countries it borders. In the Red Sea, between Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, an unusual community of reefs has evolved in waters that are warmer and saltier than typical tropical seas. The Red Sea reefs have, for this reason, developed corals with greater heat tolerance than corals elsewhere. They are sometimes studied as models for what reefs might look like in a warmer future. In the Pacific, the reefs of French Polynesia, Fiji, and the Cook Islands form some of the most remote reef communities on Earth. Many of these reefs grow around volcanic islands, where the volcanoes are slowly subsiding into the sea floor. The reefs grow upward as the islands sink, leaving behind sometimes the perfect circular atolls we discussed earlier. In the Atlantic, off the coasts of Brazil, smaller but distinctive reef systems exist with their own endemic species. In the Florida Keys, the only reef system off the continental United States runs for several hundred kilometers, providing habitat for countless local species and protecting the coast from storm waves. Across all of these regions, despite the differences in species and currents and depths, the basic logic is the same. Polyps build stone. Algae feed polyps with sunlight. Fish and invertebrates take shelter and food in the structure. The reef breathes with the tides. The reef glows by day. The reef quiets by night. Different reefs, same patient ancient pattern. Each reef is also a regional library. The Caribbean reefs hold knowledge about Atlantic Ocean conditions over centuries. The Indo-Pacific reefs hold knowledge about Pacific Ocean conditions. The Red Sea reefs hold knowledge about extreme heat tolerance. Together, the reefs of the world carry in their slow, patient stone an archive of the warm seas of Earth across geological time. They are also a source of livelihood for millions of people. Around the warm tropical coastlines, hundreds of millions of people depend on reefs for food, for income through fishing and tourism, for protection of their shores from storm waves. Reefs are not separate from human life. They are deeply woven into many human communities. This is part of why caring for reefs has become a quiet global concern. The reefs are not just beautiful. The reefs are not just biologically rich. The reefs are also providing services to the ocean, to the coastline, to the human communities that no other ecosystem can fully replace. Many reefs around the world are protected by national parks, marine reserves, and international agreements. The Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, the Belize Barrier Reef Reserve System, the Phoenix Islands Protected Area in Kiribati, these and many others represent the slow, careful work of trying to keep reefs healthy for future generations. Within these protected zones, fishing is often limited or prohibited. Certain corals are designated for special protection. Visitors are guided to swim and dive in ways that minimize harm. The reef is given the quiet space it needs to do its long, slow work without interference. The challenges facing reefs are real. Warming seas, ocean acidification, coastal pollution, overfishing, sediment runoff. None of these are small problems, but none of them are unaddressable. The reefs of the world have been responding to ocean changes for hundreds of millions of years. With careful stewardship, many reefs can adapt, recover, and continue. There is reason for hope. There are also reasons for care. Reefs that are protected, monitored, and given clean water tend to recover from stress events more completely than reefs that are not. Reefs that are surrounded by healthy coastal ecosystems, mangroves, seagrass meadows, clean rivers tend to thrive better than isolated ones. The reef is not separate from its surrounding world. Tonight, somewhere in the warm tropical seas, all of the great reefs of the world are doing their patient work. The Great Barrier Reef is humming with its countless polyps. The Coral Triangle is weaving its rich biodiversity. The Maldives is supporting its coral nation. The Caribbean is holding its small fish in its quiet cracks. The Red Sea is carrying its heat-tolerant lineages forward. All of them, together, doing what reefs have always done. The pattern continues. The pattern is older than the species. The pattern is, in its slow, patient way, one of Earth's longest songs. Let us continue slowly with our journey through their warm, patient world. There is a kind of wisdom in how a reef organizes itself, not a deliberate intelligence. The reef does not plan anything, but a slow accumulated pattern refined across hundreds of millions of years that produces somehow a stable, generous, beautiful place. The first quiet wisdom of the reef is cooperation. The polyps cooperate with their algae. The fish cooperate with their cleaning shrimp. The clownfish cooperate with their anemones. The parrotfish cooperate with the corals by grazing the algae that would otherwise overgrow them. Each pairing has its own particular nature, but cooperation runs through all of them. There is competition too. Predators eat prey, certain species displace others, some corals fight for space with their neighbors. But the dominant pattern over geological time is cooperation. The reef as a whole does not survive by aggression, it survives by partnership. This is one of the gentle teachings the reef offers. Whatever drama plays out in the daily life of any one creature, the larger system flourishes because of partnership. Healthy reefs are full of relationships. Sick reefs lose their relationships first. The presence or absence of healthy partnerships is, in some sense, the measure of the reef. The second quiet wisdom of the reef is patience. Nothing on the reef happens fast. The corals build slowly. The fish learn their territories slowly. The crabs find their crevices slowly. The reef over centuries refines itself without any rush. Speed has no advantage on a coral reef. Persistence has every advantage. This is one of the small antidotes a reef can offer to a hurried life. Sit and watch a reef long enough, and your sense of time slows down. The polyp's tentacles drift slowly, the fish move slowly, the currents change slowly. After a while, you begin to feel that fast is not the same as good, and that patient, unhurried work is one of the most powerful things in the natural world. The third quiet wisdom of the reef is diversity. No reef is built of a single species. No reef is dominated by a single shape, a single color, a single behavior. The healthiest reefs are the most diverse. The most diverse reefs are the most resilient. When a stress arrives, more species means more chances that some will adapt. More relationships means more ways for the system to repair itself. This is a quiet teaching that scales beyond reefs. Diversity is not just visually rich, it is functionally important. Systems with many parts, many species, many strategies are more likely to weather change. Systems narrowed to one strategy, one species, one scale, are more fragile. The fourth quiet wisdom of the reef is interconnection. Nothing on a reef is alone. The polyps depend on the algae. The algae depend on the polyps. The fish depend on the corals. The corals depend on the fish. The water carries nutrients to all of them. The currents come from far away. The sun comes from very far away. Each part of the reef is held by countless small connections. To remove one species from a reef is often to weaken many others. To add one stressor is to ripple effects across the whole community. Reefs do not have parts that are unrelated. Reefs are, in some sense, single organisms made of many smaller organisms, each indispensable. The fifth quiet wisdom of the reef is generosity. The reef does not exclude, it welcomes. The fish that need shelter find shelter. The plankton that need a home find homes among the polyps. The turtles that need rest find ledges. The octopus that needs a den finds a crevice. The reef, by being structurally complex and metabolically rich, gives a great deal away. It does not do this consciously. It does this by being what it is. This generosity is part of what makes a reef so quietly comforting to visit. Even briefly, even for a few minutes, you are inside a structure that exists in some sense to be a home for many. There is no individual reef builder somewhere who is keeping count. The home simply is. The sixth quiet wisdom of the reef is continuity. The reef does not depend on any single polyp, any single coral, any single fish. Individuals die, colonies die, storms knock down sections, heat events bleach corals. Throughout all of this, the larger reef continues. New polyps replace old ones, new colonies grow from drifting planulae, new fish settle in. The reef as a whole is older, longer, more enduring than any of its parts. This is one of the things that makes a reef quietly inspiring. It does not require any one of its members to be permanent. It only requires the pattern to continue. Polyps, stones, algae, currents, tides, plankton, fish, crevices, hiding, eating, resting, growing, spawning, year after year, century after century. The pattern persists where individuals do not. The seventh quiet wisdom of the reef is presence without effort. The reef does not strive. The reef does not seek. The reef does not aspire. The reef simply is exactly where it has always been, doing exactly what it has always done. There is a kind of peace in this, a peace that comes not from achievement but from being. If tonight you have been carrying things that feel heavy, small worries, large worries, decisions, regrets, anticipations, perhaps the reef has something to offer. The reef does not carry these. The reef does not need them. The reef simply continues, patient, cooperative, diverse, interconnected, generous, continuous, present. We can sometimes borrow a little of its quiet wisdom for an evening. None of this requires effort to receive. We do not have to learn from the reef. We only have to be near it, even in our minds, even at the distance of a sleep story. Tonight, the warm tropical seas are full of these gentle, quiet teachings. The reefs are doing their patient work. They are not trying to teach. They are simply being themselves. We can, if we like, take what we need from them and leave the rest exactly where it is. Let us drift slowly toward the gentle ending of our journey. There is one more chapter, and then the reef will release us into sleep. Across the long vista of geological time, the reefs of Earth have been remarkable companions. They have been here through nearly every major chapter of life's story. They have witnessed continents form, they have witnessed oceans open, they have witnessed mass extinctions, ice ages, evolutionary explosions. They have witnessed nearly all of it. In the seas of nearly 500 million years ago, the first true reefs formed. They were not built by today's species. Most of those builders are long extinct, but they established the pattern. Stones built by small creatures in shallow tropical seas. From that first pattern, every reef that has ever existed has descended. In the seas of 300 million years ago, during the late Paleozoic, reefs were dominated by giant single-celled organisms called sponges, alongside ancient cnidarian relatives that no longer exist. Those reefs grew in warm, shallow shelves around what would later become Pangaea, the great supercontinent. The reefs were extensive then, before the great Permian extinction nearly ended them. After the Permian extinction, when much of marine life was wiped out, reefs took millions of years to return. When they did in the Triassic and the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, they were transformed. New species, new shapes, new relationships. Reefs that included the strange shellfish-like rudists, which have since gone extinct. After the Cretaceous extinction, 66 million years ago, reefs again recovered. The species we see today began emerging. The basic pattern, colony-building polyps in symbiosis with algae, was refined. The reefs of the modern world began to take their current shape. Across all of these long ages, the reefs were doing the same fundamental work. Polyps building stone, algae feeding polyps, fish and other creatures sheltering in the structure. The species changed, the cast of characters changed, the play remained in essence the same. Meanwhile, the continents shifted. The poles moved, the oceans opened and closed. The Sahara was once a sea floor. The Alps were once at the bottom of the Tethys Ocean. The American Midwest was once a shallow tropical sea full of reefs. The Earth, which now seems so fixed, has been reshaping itself constantly. The reefs were there during much of the reshaping. This is the perspective the reefs offer when contemplated long enough. The Earth is not a fixed object. The Earth is a slow, dynamic, restless surface on which life has been continuing in countless small communities for hundreds of millions of years. The reefs are one of the longest-lived of those communities. They are still here in some form after everything. If you could compress the history of life on Earth into a single year, the first cells would form in March. The first multicellular life would appear in November. The first reefs would emerge sometime in early December. The dinosaurs would arrive a few days before Christmas. Modern humans would not appear until about 10 minutes before midnight on December 31st. And yet, in these proportions, the reefs have been continuing for almost a month. Modern human civilizations have existed for the last several seconds on this calendar. The reefs have been witnessing all of human history from a position of much deeper time. They were there before any human ever swam in any sea. They will, in some form, be there long after any of us. This is a deeply restful perspective when allowed to settle in. The worries that fill our days are often immediate, recent, urgent. They are real and they matter, but they exist within a vastly larger frame. The reefs have been here through wars and empires and famines and hopes and disasters and renaissances. They were here when none of these had names. They will be here when none of these are remembered. It is not a cynical perspective. The smallness of any one moment in geological time does not mean the moment is unimportant. Each polyp's small life is real. Each fish's brief existence is real. Each storm and each calm is real. The continuity does not erase the present. The continuity holds the present. Tonight is one moment. The reef tonight is one moment of a vastly longer life. The polyps extending their tentacles tonight are doing what polyps have done on countless other nights. The work is real. The continuity is real. Both are true. If you have ever felt very small in the face of large time, the reef has the same response that it has given to every other creature for hundreds of millions of years. It does not require anything from you. It does not test you. It does not measure you. It simply continues alongside you for whatever portion of its long life you are sharing. This is one of the gentle gifts of contemplating the natural world. We can find ourselves smaller than we thought, and at the same time more held than we knew, both at once. The reefs do not demand attention. They are simply there, doing their work, ready to be visited or imagined or, for tonight, drifted toward in dream. Tomorrow, somewhere in the warm tropical seas, the same reefs will be here. The same polyps, the same patient work. They will be exactly where they were tonight. They will be exactly where they were last week. They will be exactly where they were 1,000 years ago, many of them in some form where they were 100,000 years ago. They will be there if you ever want to visit. They will be there if you never visit. They are not demanding your attention. They are simply continuing. They have always been simply continuing. They will, with care, continue to continue. Let us drift finally toward the soft ending of our journey with this long view in mind. The reef is here. The night is long. We are slowly arriving at the end of our visit. Soon, the good night will come. If you could put a sensitive microphone in the water near a healthy coral reef, you would discover something quietly surprising. The reef is not silent. It is not even quiet. It is full of small, careful sounds. The reef hums and clicks and pops and chirps. It hisses with the gentle motion of currents. It rumbles softly when waves break above, and quietly underlying everything, it carries the constant slow rhythm of countless small creatures making sounds that scientists are still in the early stages of understanding. Snapping shrimp are the loudest residents of many reefs. These small shrimp have a specialized claw that can produce a sharp pop when it snaps shut. The pop creates a tiny burst of pressure strong enough to stun small prey. The cumulative sound of many snapping shrimp on a single reef can create a constant crackling that scientists have compared to the sound of a frying pan. Parrotfish, when they graze on coral, produce slow, rhythmic crunching sounds. The strong, fused teeth scrape against the calcium carbonate stone in a series of careful motions, and each scrape is audible underwater. A school of parrotfish working an algae-covered area sounds, in some sense, like a small group of careful diners. Many reef fish make sounds, too. Some grunt softly to communicate with their schools, some squeak when threatened. Some, during mating, produce specific calls that travel surprising distances through the water. The reef has, in this sense, a sort of ongoing slow conversation in voices most of which we can barely hear. Even the corals themselves may be quietly noisy. Some research suggests that polyps produce subtle sounds during their nightly tentacle extension, perhaps as gas bubbles release from their tissues. These sounds are too small for human hearing, but might be detected by the small drifting larvae of fish and other reef creatures. In recent years, scientists have begun to use these reef sounds as a way of measuring reef health. Healthy reefs are noticeably noisier than degraded ones. The cracking of shrimp, the grazing of parrotfish, the calls of dam shellfish, all of these contribute to a soundscape that, when present, signals a thriving community. When the soundscape goes quiet, something is missing. Larval fish, in their drifting plankton stage, appear to use these soundscapes for navigation. When they are ready to settle, they swim toward the sound of a reef. Reefs that are noisier, fuller of life, attract more settling larvae. Reefs that are quieter attract fewer. The reef, in some sense, calls its own next generation home. Beyond sound, the reef communicates through chemistry. Many reef creatures release chemical signals into the water: pheromones for mating, alarm signals when threatened, identification markers for their species. The water around a reef carries these signals in slow drifting clouds, invisible but functional. Coral spawning, which we discussed earlier, may rely partly on these chemical signals. The first polyps to spawn release chemicals that may trigger nearby polyps to spawn as well. The cascade can spread across an entire reef in a coordinated wave that travels through the water itself, even faster than light could travel through the same medium would matter. Cleaner fish use chemical and visual signals to communicate to larger fish that they are available for cleaning service. The larger fish recognize the signals and present themselves to be cleaned. The cleaner removes parasites. The relationship is, in some sense, a kind of trade negotiated through quiet language. Octopuses communicate through their skin. They change color and texture in real time, sometimes producing waves of color that ripple across their bodies. Researchers have begun to suspect that some of these color changes are intentional signals to other octopuses, to potential mates, to predators. The octopus's body is, in some sense, a visual language we are only beginning to read. Many reef creatures also communicate through bioluminescence. In the deeper parts of some reefs, certain shrimp and small fish produce flashes of light to confuse predators or signal to mates. The reef at deep night, in some places, is quietly punctuated by tiny living lights. All of this communication happens at scales much smaller and slower than human conversation. None of it is for our benefit. The reef is talking to itself in 100 different ways all the time. We can listen sometimes with the right instruments. We can wonder more often what we have not yet learned to hear. There is something quietly humbling in this. The natural world is full of communication that does not involve us. The reef has been talking to itself for hundreds of millions of years. Whatever signals are passing through that warm tropical water tonight, they are being received and used by the creatures they are intended for, regardless of whether anyone is listening from the human side. This is one of the gifts of contemplating the natural world. We learn that communication, language, and meaning are not human inventions. They predate us by enormous spans of time. They are widespread, they are subtle, they are everywhere in the soft sounds and chemical signals and slow color changes of every healthy ecosystem. Tonight, somewhere in the warm tropical seas, a snapping shrimp is producing a tiny pop. A parrotfish in its mucus cocoon is breathing slowly. A larval fish is drifting toward the sound of a reef. A coral colony is releasing chemical signals into the water. An octopus is producing a slow wave of color across its skin. The reef is talking. The reef is listening to itself. The reef is doing what it has always done. And we, far away in our beds, can rest, while the conversation continues without us. Let us drift now into the soft ending of our journey. There is a particular relationship the reef has with time that is worth contemplating, gently before we fall asleep. The reef does not experience time the way we do. The reef does not feel hours or days or years. The reef simply continues patiently in the only direction it can, and yet the reef is shaped by time at every scale. The tide rises and falls every 12 hours. The day arrives and departs every 24 hours. The seasons shift across months. The El Niño cycles play out across years. The currents shift across decades. The slow climate change of geological epochs unfolds across millennia. Every one of these scales leaves marks in the reef. In the reef stone, we can read the tides, small bands marking each rise and fall. We can read the seasons, slightly thicker bands during warm, productive months, thinner during cooler months. We can read the years, annual rings comparable to those in trees. We can read the decades, patterns of growth tied to climate cycles. We can read the centuries, long, slow shifts in species composition. This is one of the gentle gifts the reef offers. It reminds us that time has many scales. The hours of our day are real, but they are nested inside the months of our seasons, which are nested inside the years of our lives, which are nested inside the centuries of our cultures, which are nested inside the millennia of our species, which are nested inside the much longer span of life itself. When we are anxious about something happening today, it can sometimes help to remember that today is one moment in a vastly larger story. The polyps of the reef, building stone tonight, do not think about today. They simply continue. The colony growing across decades does not think about this year. It simply continues. The reef rising across millennia does not think about this century. It simply continues. This is a kind of teaching. Not a lesson exactly, just a perspective. Things happen, time continues, patient processes accumulate. Nothing requires us to fix everything in the next 24 hours. The reef, which has been continuing for hundreds of millions of years, does not require speed, it requires patience. Sleep, in some sense, is one of the body's ways of participating in long time. Each night, we step out of the urgent, immediate sense of waking life. We descend into the slower rhythms of the body. We let go of the day's small matters. We rejoin briefly the longer, slower processes that operate beneath conscious life. Tonight, while you sleep, your cells are doing repair work that takes hours. Your immune system is preparing tomorrow's defenses. Your memory is being consolidated. Your tissues are healing. None of this happens in seconds. All of it requires the slow, patient time of the night. The reef, in its way, is doing parallel work. The polyps are laying down their tiny new layers of stone. The colonies are extending their territory by fractions of millimeters. The fish are sleeping in their crevices, healing from the day. The seafloor is shifting almost imperceptibly. None of this happens fast. All of it requires the patient time of the night. In some quiet way, you and the reef are doing the same kind of work tonight. Different bodies, different scales, same patience, same slow, patient continuation. This is a gentle thing to fall asleep with. The thought that you are not alone in your nightly work, that countless other living systems all around the warm world are doing their own slow, patient versions of the same thing. Repair, renewal, continuation, all of it on the long time scale that life prefers. There is no fast version of being alive. There never has been. The body has always required time. The reef has always required time. The patient, slow processes of life cannot be hurried. They cannot be skipped. They can only be honored by giving them what they need, which mostly is permission to continue at their own pace. Tonight, you are giving your body permission. The reef has had permission for hundreds of millions of years. The earth, in some sense, runs on this kind of permission. Things happen at the pace they happen. Nothing requires our hurry. Let your body have its time. Let the reef have its time. Let the night have its time. There is plenty of all three. There has always been plenty. The tide somewhere is rising slowly. The polyps somewhere are laying their stones. Your body here is repairing itself in the patient way bodies have always repaired themselves. All of these are happening in different places at the same time. All of them are happening on different scales of time at the same time. All of them are continuing. Let it be enough that the world continues. Let it be enough that the reef continues. Let it be enough that you continue in your own quiet way to be alive in the same world as the reef, on the same patient breathing earth, in the same slow, generous time. There is nothing more you have to do tonight. The continuation is already happening. The work is already being done. The reef is already where it needs to be. Your body is already doing what it needs to do. Let us drift now into the soft final ending of our journey. There is one room left, the room of good night. We will arrive there together, slowly, exactly the way we have moved through every other room of this long, quiet evening. Slowly, there's plenty of night. We have arrived, slowly, at the soft end of our journey through the warm world of coral reefs. The reef is quieter now than when we began. The body is heavier. The room is the same room, but it feels different in the way rooms feel different at the deep end of the night than they did at its beginning. If your eyes are still open, allow them to close now. There is nothing left to see that has not already been quietly described. The reefs will continue their work, whether you're paying attention or not. They do not need an audience. They never have. Somewhere in the warm tropical seas right now, polyps are extending their soft tentacles into dim, warm water. Stones are slowly thickening. Octopuses are moving across reef terrain. Plankton is drifting up from the depths. The slow, patient work of the reef is continuing exactly as it has every night for hundreds of millions of years. There is no part of this story that you have to remember. The reefs will continue without your memory. They have always done so. They will, in some form, continue long after any of us. By morning, you may not remember a single sentence of what was said tonight. That is the right ending. Let your breath be ordinary again. Not deeper, not slower, just whatever it is. Notice that it has been doing its work all evening without your help, exactly the way the polyps have been doing theirs. Let your shoulders be soft. Let your jaw be loose. Let your hands rest where they have already chosen to rest. Let the bed hold you. Let the pillow hold your head. Let the night hold the room. Thank you for staying with us this long. If sleep is closer now than it was when we began, then this night did its work. Subscribing helps us return next week with another slow journey through the warm reef sea, recorded with the same patient voice you have been listening to tonight. The reefs will continue without us tonight. The polyps will keep building. The fish will keep sleeping in their crevices. The octopuses will keep hunting in their slow, careful searches. The currents will keep flowing through the warm gardens. The work that has gone on for hundreds of millions of years will continue for one more night, alongside countless others, exactly as it always has. Tomorrow, somewhere in the warm tropical seas, another sunrise will reach the reef. The polyps will retract their tentacles. The day-shift fish will emerge. The reef will hum with its visible activity once more. The slow rhythm will continue. Tomorrow is already prepared by the patient work of the night. And tomorrow night again, and the night after, the reefs of the world have been continuing for almost 500 million years. They will continue tonight while you sleep. They will continue many more nights after this one. If your eyes are still open, allow them to close now. There is nothing left to do tonight. There is nothing more to be said. The journey has reached its quiet end. The polyps are still extending. The stones are still thickening. The plankton is still drifting up. The octopuses are still hunting. The currents are still flowing. The reefs are still alive quietly in the warm seas, doing what reefs have always done. Let the slow rhythm of your breath continue in and out. The reef breathes too in cycles much slower than ours, tides rising, tides falling, polyps extending, polyps retracting. The reef has been breathing this way for nearly 500 million years. Tonight, you and the reef are breathing together in a small way, even if you are very far apart. There is something quietly companionable about that. The reef does not know you. You may never visit it, and yet both of you are alive tonight in the same world on the same patient breathing earth. Let it be enough that you are here, and that the reefs are there, and that the patient inheritance of life continues, tonight in countless forms, all over the warm world. There is no other body in the universe that does this exactly the way yours does. There is no other reef in the universe that does this exactly the way that one does. And yet you and it are both alive, both breathing, both resting, both in the long lineage of being alive that the planet has been refining for billions of years. That is a gentle thing to fall asleep with. The thought that you are not alone, that there are countless other lives doing other versions of this same simple work, being alive, being patient, resting, repairing, continuing. Sleep deeply now. The night will hold you, the reefs will continue. Tomorrow, the warm, shallow seas will still be there somewhere, with their patient gardens and their countless small lives. Until then, drift. Drift slowly. Drift completely. Drift into the warm world of coral reefs, where the polyps are still working, where the fish are still sleeping, where the slow rhythms of the warm sea will carry on whether anyone is watching or not. Sleep well and good night. The coral polyps are still extending their soft tentacles into the warm tropical water. The fish are still moving in slow, patient currents through the gardens. The sun is still rising and falling somewhere over countless reefs around the world. You do not need to remember anything from tonight. The story will be here again the next time you need it. Good night from the Circadian Institute.